We're going to continue our media availabilities. We're now joined by Jimmie Johnson, the driver of the number 48 Lowe's Chevrolet for Hendrick Motorsports. Jimmie, you have 3 wins this season, but this is one of only 3 tracks that you've yet to win at. Overall, how do you get a win here?
You know, I've thought that I would win here before I would at Sonoma. I took to this track pretty quickly in the Busch days. And the Cup Series, I've been a top 3 car at times, probably more often than not a top 5 car. So I hope to find that little bit extra to hold on with the long run speed. I seem to be able to be competitive on the short run, but like many drivers deal with here, I just get the brakes too hot. And on the long run, I seem to give up a little bit of speed. So I need to create lap time, I think, without depending on the brakes so much come race time. So we're working on a few things in that department. Certainly driver inputs play a big role in that. And looking forward to getting on track. We had a terrible race here last year, and we're taking out early in a pretty spectacular fashion off the carousel. And looking forward to a good, strong run here this weekend.
We'll open it up for questions. Just raise your hand. We'll get a mic over to you.
Bob Cockers, ESPN. Dale Jr. has said that he didn't want this last season to feel miserable for his team, and I'm kind of curious at just overall at Hendrick, how much is there any angst over the fact that he hasn't had a great final season so far? Is there worry? Is it what's the feeling and mood about it overall?
I don't see any. I know Dale's living his experience, but from where I sit, what I see going on, I just see race teams trying to win races as business as usual. I haven't been a part of any conversations that focus on that. I'm happy to see Dale so relaxed and enjoying himself, and of course I want to take a little responsibility for that and introducing him to the bicycle, because I know how much happiness it brings to me, and I watch that happening in his life. But I still see a very competitive and hungry guy. He's always done a very nice job of articulating his feelings, and he's certainly been open about his experiences this year. But inside the walls of Hendrick Motorsports, it's business as usual. We're not happy with where we are. We want to be dominating every race as a group, and so it's honestly business as usual there.
Did you guys? What were the expectations when he came back, and where did you feel like were expectations maybe too high for a guy who's been out for 4 or 5 months?
Again, internally, expectations. It's been business as usual. We want to win. He wants to win. Greg wants to win. That team is preparing, each and every week, regardless of who was in it last year, to win. I think there's more outside pressure, and I think Dale's aware of his fan base and what's written and what's said, maybe more than some other drivers. And there certainly has been pressure on that side, but inside of Hendrick Motorsports, and it's just been, let's go win races, and then nothing's changed there. Big difference for me, though, Bob, is nobody's really liked me outside the car my whole career, so I've never really paid attention to that. Dale has a fan base to worry about. Say that jokingly, obviously.
Well, are you getting blamed for his bad season?
Yes, absolutely. It's my fault. I'm a terrible teammate. We all know this.
Reed Spencer was NASCAR Wire. You've got 3 tracks left. After his win last week at Pocono, Kyle has 1, and Jeff Gordon was stopped at 1, being Kentucky. Is there any sort of friendly competition about completing that cycle where you've got all the Cup tracks?
I'm so out of touch with stats that I felt like Jeff and Tony were the only guys kind of in that conversation. And then last weekend I learned that Kyle's now down to 1. And I was like, well, dang, there's somebody else in the party here. And Kyle will get it. I can't believe he hasn't won at Charlotte already in a Cup car. Kyle, it's safe to say Kyle's going to be the first one to close out all the tracks. I think with the way he runs and how good he runs at that track. I still have here. Kentucky's been a disaster for me. Chicago, I should have closed a long time ago. I think Kyle, if you're a betting man, I'd put money on Kyle closing out all the tracks first.
I have a question for you. Could you talk a little bit about, if you have noticed, kind of the shift in the approach to road course racing? Because there was a time 10, 15 years ago where people kind of came in and tolerated it and said, let's just get out of here with a car. And now people have really stepped up their game, and it's a real opportunity for, a couple dozen people to be able to win the race.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the days of a ringer coming in and outrunning the regulars just doesn't happen anymore. I think clearly the teams are more prepared and have leaned on the road course ringers and friends they might have at other race teams to build better road course cars. So I think that has been going along behind the scenes. And then I also want to believe at the same time that the drivers coming into the sport just have a more diverse background than the drivers did 20, 30 years ago. So I feel like between those two and just the pure fact that the competition in this garage area, everybody takes it so seriously, is kind of the third piece that has just equalized things and then kind of pushed it ahead to where the regulars are the favorites now.
Kelly CrandallRacer.com. Jimmie, last week Kyle Larson said what's been going on between you two is just hard racing. He thinks it's fun. He doesn't think maybe you think it's fun, but a line hasn't been crossed. It's just hard racing. What has been going on from your perspective between you two? Because it seems like the last couple of weeks you two have been engaged in a pretty hard battle out there.
Yeah, it's been a blast. I've loved it. No, honestly, I haven't said much about it, and I was surprised to see everything kind of brew up, and I guess we're always looking for a story that's fun to talk about. But truth be told, I just race people how they race me. And it doesn't matter if it's Kyle Larson or Martin Truex, Jeff Gordon, Tony Stewart, doesn't matter. I mean, there's that environment on the track. And through the course of the year, it's been intense with the 42 at times. So, I've been able to race him back the same way. And honestly, it's not singled out to just Kyle. In stage racing today, we have to block and maintain and hold position more than ever. And to see the extent that some drivers have gone through, even myself, to maintain track position, I said it after Indy, Mark Martin would have a heart attack if he was racing in this era. The game has changed, and I have had nothing personal towards Kyle. I don't think he's had anything personal towards me. You just get in that environment of racing people how they race you, and then certain scenarios exist where you need to fight for that position for whatever reason, and it is what it is. So it's just a product of stage racing. So I think NASCAR should be happy they've created a more intense environment, because that's really what it is. Yeah.
One more, I promise. How do you expect the racing to be, knowing that this track, this kind of course, road course, with only a few weeks left for some people to qualify for the chase? Do you expect it to be much more aggressive? I mean, granted, it always is, but because it's a road course, does it allow for people to be, what I'm saying, a little bit more aggressive? And do you anticipate that for the race?
I really do, and it's just kind of building on Kelly's question, where there's 2 or 3 obvious areas to make a pass here. And if somebody's faster behind you and you can hold them up for a lap or two and let their tires get hot or overwork their brakes, you throw a couple blocks, you protect your spot, you can keep somebody behind you pretty easily here. So when that starts to happen, if you're somebody that is needs to win, desperate in points, you might have the bumper come in your direction. So I think that stage racing in general has really ramped this up, and then the equality in cars and how difficult it is to pass is another component to that. So I anticipate it being very exciting here. The speeds are higher here versus Sonoma, so moving somebody out of the way is a bit trickier, and I don't think is common, but it should be a very exciting race.
Claire B. Lang, Sirius XM NASCAR Radio. The fans were calling and seemed to really like the racing between you and Kyle Larson. And, there's something about a mega champion racing a young guy coming in and everybody sort of feeling each other out. Can you talk about that? Some of the conversation was when you have a young driver coming in and a veteran who's a, mega champion, that it's good to see. Is there any feeling each other? How do you race each other? How do you kind of work these things out?
For me, I don't, especially with Kyle, I don't see him as a young guy come in, and I just see him as a fast driver, fast car. So I don't. My head doesn't go there. At Indy, I had just passed him, and then had to deal with some lap traffic, and then Kyle got back to me, and I was defending my spot. The racing, again, just has changed out there. And spotters have a huge role in today's racing, and telling you exactly where the guy is behind you so that you can cut the air off to their car and make it more difficult for them. So there's just a lot of little things that drive the intensity up and the frustration up when you're in a faster vehicle trying to overtake someone. But for myself personally, I don't see somebody's experience when I'm staring at their car. It's really about that moment, and how somebody's raced you also comes into play. We're like elephants out there. We kind of remember things that people might forget otherwise, but it's really just a racing thing. And Kyle's an amazing talent. He's going to win many more races and without a doubt win championships. So I'm happy to have those heated competitions with drivers out there, including Kyle.
Are there any other questions for Jimmie? Right here to the left.
John Kikis from AP. A few years ago, you came up here and tested or drove a sports car in the race to improve your skills. What would a win here mean for you personally?
I love this area. I've always been a big fan of this track, and really enjoyed my experience with Gainesco up here in their prototype. Running the boot was, I think, something all drivers think about or dream about. So to be able to do all of that, learn a few lessons along the way, I carry over the Cup car has been a lot of fun. I'd love to win here, without a doubt. It's a very cool track, a lot of history here, and as we were discussing earlier, one of 3 tracks I haven't won at, so I have a lot of motivation to win here.
All right, thank you, Jimmie.
Cool,
Good luck
thank you.
this weekend.